Hi, everybody. Lovely weather we're having. So, I am Louisa, and I run a small company called Superhuman Limited. And we're not called Superhuman because we think we are, but rather because we genuinely believe that technology could give every one of us superpowers, but only if we apply it correctly. And we do that by putting people first, and not the technology. So that's my perspective, and that's the perspective that I bring to pretty much anything that I talk about, and especially to this topic, which is about growth. So when I started to think about reinventing growth, I thought, is growth actually the problem? I don't think so. I think the problem is we have a problem with growth. In the same way that wine or caipirinhas or beer are not the problem. A lot of us have a problem with alcohol. So that's what I want to talk about, the relationship that we have with growth and how that is broken, and maybe some ways that we can turn the car around before it goes off the cliff. And to do that, I'm going to use the analogy of nature. Because nature, everything in nature, is 100% all the time about growth. There is nothing out there that doesn't literally live to grow and propagate and survive and thrive. And there are lots of different ways to grow. There are trees, which grow very tall, give us lovely canopies for shade, create shelter for other plants and animals to live. They also feed on very deep roots. You can't have a tall tree without roots. And those roots are often deeper and more complex than what we see above the ground. What lies below the surface is what drives what we see and what we experience. And there's been all kinds of very interesting studies done about trees, that they speak to each other through their roots. They draw light down from their plants, down from their branches into their roots to help them expand, to help them feed themselves better. So you've got the trees. You also have fungi and mold and bacteria that grow over the surfaces of things. And if they're left unchecked, think about if you have a tomato and you have mold growing on it, pretty soon you're not going to have a tomato anymore. All you have is mold, unless you stop it somehow, yes? And then you have parasites, entities that sort of hijack their hosts and get them to do things on their behalf. So parasites might get you to carry them around or get you to find them food. But they don't add any meaning. You don't get to be you. You belong to something else. So in nature, there are all manner of things that, if left unchecked, could be very damaging, could be very destructive. And this is why nature works in ecosystems. Ecosystems are all about balance. They're self-regulating, they're self-correcting. If one element gets too out of hand, others will mutate, change, develop immunities, to curtail or even to destroy the thing that's gone wrong. Oh, look, there's my slide. It's the only one you're getting, by the way. I haven't done any more. I'm sorry about that. Where was I? Yes, ecosystems. So ecosystems are self-correcting. Something goes wrong in the ecosystem, something else will come along to balance it out. That's how it works. That's why trees talk to each other. That's why they need to. And what you end up with is a certain amount of destruction is critical for the whole thing to survive. Forest fires are a great example of this. They happen naturally. They're not always set by careless humans with a cigarette. Forest fires are a way that the forest clears out its undergrowth, makes sure that there's fresh earth and fresh space for new growth to come up. So they're natural, and there's a certain amount of destruction built into it. And I think that we can draw parallels between the natural world and the technology world, or at least I'm going to try. In tech, we also have trees. We have the big old growth, the Googles, the Mozillas. These things in technology terms have taken eons to get as big as they have. And they have roots that are very deep and very complex. In Google's case, we don't have any idea what they even are. They're invisible to us, but they power this canopy that has given us the ability to make all kinds of other things that we make and that we live with every day. You've got your Twitters and your Instagrams, your smaller shrubberies and your big vines that grow within and around, feeding on and being fed by this old growth forest. You've got your bacteria, your mold, your fungi, your 200,000 different kinds of alarm clocks. Who needs 200,000 different kinds of alarm clocks? But there they are. And your 25 different identical delivery services that will deliver the same food from the same restaurant to your house if you live in most of America or Europe. And we even have parasites. We have clever copycats who go out and they find a successful product, a successful service. They copy it down to the last detail, down to the last pixel, and they hijack that thing to make money for themselves without driving any meaning, without driving any real value. And that word, meaning, is one that's very important, and I'll be coming back to it a few times. The thing is that I think that the tech world would probably be just fine with all of these different kinds of players in it if it functioned like an ecosystem. But it doesn't. Why? It's all about incentive, right? A forest has a really simple incentive to live. Not just to live today, not just to survive until tomorrow, but to have longevity, to have sustainability, to carry on into the foreseeable future. That is the incentive of the forest. That's what it lives for. In technology, what's our incentive? More often than not, it's money. We are enabled to do the things that we do by the people who fund us, which is sometimes governments, but more often they're venture capitalists. It's the finance world. It's money. And money is another thing that we have a somewhat problematic relationship with. So, quick sidebar to do a little brief history of money. I don't have a whole lot of time, but it's important to kind of understand the connection here. The thing is that we had commerce, humans, a long time before we had currency, right? I have a goat, you have some wine, I will trade you this goat for 4 barrels of wine. You get the goat, I get the wine, everybody's happy. But what happens if you don't want a goat? You want something else. Now, I have to go out and find the other thing that you want, trade my goat for that, and then come back and bring that to you. It gets a little bit complicated. This is where currency comes in very handy. So what that means is that I can now go and sell my goat to that guy over there, because he loves goats. We won't talk about why he loves goats, but he loves goats, and he gives me 4 monies for my goat. And then I come to you, and I say, hello, I would like 4 barrels of your finest wine, please, and I give you the 4 monies. And then you can do whatever you want with those 4 monies. You can buy whatever you want. And what this did was it enabled us to extend our trade, to extend our access to things, to extend into ambition beyond need. Yes? Over time, money has become the end itself. So instead of being an enabler that lets us do all of this other interesting stuff, things we make, things we want to exchange, things we want to teach each other, I sometimes feel like a lot of our ambitions are in the service of the ultimate goal, which is more money. And I think this is reflected in the tech industry. And I need to stop and say, I have nothing against people making money. I like money. It buys me nice plane tickets and caipirinhas. But I don't think that that should be the only reason why we make things. And in the technology industries, if you want funding, that is more often than not what you are encouraged to do. You're not encouraged to solve a real problem. You're encouraged to come up with an idea that will make somebody a lot of money quite quickly, get traction quite quickly so they can turn it around and sell it. Stands to reason. The irony here is that I spent the first half of my career in digital asking the same question. What is the problem you're trying to solve? What is the point of this thing that you want to do? Are you sure that this is the thing you need to do? And people didn't like the question. They didn't want to answer it. They didn't know the answers sometimes. And I would walk away from projects because there wasn't a good enough reason to do it. Somebody just wanted to do it because that guy did. And at some point, 7 or 8 years ago, suddenly, this question, what is the problem you're trying to solve, became the central question of the whole startup scene worldwide. Now you go to any pitch meeting in Silicon Valley, and the first thing you will hear is, the problem we are trying to solve is, which should be great, right? Except that I think we've forgotten what a problem is. So you go to these pitch meetings in Silicon Valley, and somebody says, what is the problem you're trying to solve? And the answer will often be, something along the lines of, well, some people don't know where they can get sushi delivered after 11 o'clock on a Tuesday. Is this a problem? I'm not sure this is actually a problem. 1 in 10 people on the face of the planet doesn't have access to fresh drinking water. That is a fucking problem, my friend. The fact that you don't know where to get sushi at 11 is not really, it's convenience. Convenience is great. I'm happy to pay for convenience. I am a lazy git when I want to be. But I don't think we should get confused. The thing is that just like money, this abstraction, this idea, this way of expressing a thing has taken over the thing itself. With money, we've forgotten that money was just an enabler to let us do all this other stuff. And over here with technology, we've forgotten that technology is meant to help us solve really hard problems. And we've gotten distracted with, growing like mold, growing like fungi, growing like bacteria. We'll make, okay, there's Uber. Uber's great. We'll make Uber for dogs. We'll make Uber for parrots. We'll make Uber for monkeys. People like to look at pictures of things before they buy them. We'll make Instagram an e-commerce app. This is how we're functioning. We're not digging deep. We're not growing tall. We're just covering all the surfaces, every last corner. Or we can be worse. My favorite thing to rant about is this thing called the sharing economy. You guys familiar with that term? It's bullshit. This is not about sharing. When I put my house on Airbnb and you rent it for a night, are you coming over and I'm gonna make you dinner and I'm gonna feed you some wine and you can sleep on the couch and I'll make you some breakfast in the morning and off you go, no money? That would be sharing. That would be me sharing my home with you. I'm not sharing my home with me, I'm asking you to pay me to spend the night in my beautiful home. This is peer-to-peer commerce. It has nothing to do with sharing. This is, and what's brilliant about it is that this builds on one of the oldest ideas. This is my goat for your wine all over again. This is you and me doing a bit of business. And what these platforms do is they create the security, because I don't know you, we don't live in the same village. For all I know, you might be a liar. For all I know, you might not have any money. That's what these platforms do. They're more enablers. And it's brilliant. But that's not what I hear people talking about when they're talking about the sharing economy. What I hear them talking about is, how do we monetize relationships that other people have with each other? And that's a parasite. That's bringing no meaning and hijacking the thing for itself, for its own gain. So there's that word again, meaning. And I think for me, that's what's at the heart of all of this. I think that humans are driven by a quest for meaning. We see it in everything that we do, the stories we tell, the things that we believe in, the relationships that we build, the causes that we're passionate about. We're driven by a search for meaning in our lives. And I think that's what we need to do if we're going to reinvent our relationship with growth. We need to dig deep and find meaning. And I would like to suggest 3 ways that we might begin to do that. I don't have much time left, so I'm going to go fast. 1, I think we need to rethink the relationship between technology and money. So, why does every technology company have to be for profit? There's been a lot of talk in the media lately, because Twitter is having a hard time. There's been a lot of talk lately about what if Twitter became a non-profit. I think this is a bloody great idea. If you look at what's been happening in the States and in the UK, this whole post-fact world that we're living in, where people live in social media echo chambers and don't really have true information about what's happening in the world, and democracy is arguably collapsing as a result of it, how great would it be if one or more of these platforms became a public service? And instead of focusing all of their energy on making more money, They got to focus their money on improving the flow of information, improving communication, underpinning democracy. That would be pretty cool, right? And that would then open the way for lots of other businesses that could be for profit. I'm not saying everything should be free, but maybe we should think about some things where money is not the most important thing. So that's number one. Number two, I think we all need to think more like an ecosystem. So most startups that I speak to in my mentoring programs, they have an idea. They have a very specific idea, and it's going to sit here in the marketplace, and they don't talk about how it connects with other things. That happens later. That happens maybe with APIs or SDKs or whatever, and they're usually kind of rickety and don't work very well. But everything's very siloed, everything's very isolated. I think that a lot of the stuff that we use every day could really benefit from being more connected with the other things that we use every day. It would make our lives easier. And I had a whole thing about smart cities here, but because we're in Rio and because you guys have just had a really big smart cities project, a lot of smart cities projects, and this is one of them, is all root and no branch. There's nothing there for us to connect with. There's nothing there for citizens to feel like they're a part of and to bring value into citizens' lives. What if we start grafting branches onto that, making services that can share data with what the city knows, that can extend our capacities? I mean, what if, I don't know, what if Copacabana Beach could itself ask for volunteers to help clean it up after New Year's Eve? Small things like that bring the city to us could improve quality of life, could improve our relationship with the places that we live, and I think that's how we judge the quality of a city, surely. So we need to think more like an ecosystem. And the third thing is that we need to take personal responsibility. I know that most of us aren't C-suite executives, most of us aren't in charge at the places where we work. That doesn't mean you can't ask questions. It doesn't mean you can't research things. It doesn't mean that you have to accept the path that's given you and the list of things that you're asked to do. You don't have to be like a flag-burning dissident every day, but if we all go around assuming that that problem over there, somebody else is handling it, then nobody's going to be handling that problem. And it's going to be pretty epic by the time it emerges. So those three things, if we do those three things, rethink the relationship between technology and money, think more like an ecosystem and less myopically siloed, and if we take personal responsibility for all the things that we work on, I think then we will start to reinvent our relationship with growth and make a future that we all want to live in. Thank you.